Hi, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Audrey, and I'm the virtual producer for this event. We'll bring our speaker up in a minute, but I wanted to establish some guidelines for today's webinar. First, you'll notice that there is both a chat function and a Q&A tab. We ask that if you want to ask a question, please use the Q&A tab, and any comments or insights you want to add should go into the chat. Also, this is a short 30-minute webinar. There will be a bit of interactivity, mostly through polling or asking you to respond in a chat. So nothing too onerous, but we hope you will participate. Also, at the very end of the webinar, during the wrap-up, we will be sharing a PDF file in the chat that will have links to research papers and articles that we mentioned during the event. Having said that, I'd like to get things rolling by introducing today's speaker, Learngisitics' very own founder, Louis Trahan. Louis has been in the learning and development space for 19 years and has worked with hundreds of organizations, helping them find and manage training programs. He is also an avid AI user who has incorporated automation and chat into his daily personal and professional life. So Louis, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Hello, everyone, and thanks, Audrey, for that introduction. Remember, if you need any assistance at all during the session, Audrey is just a chat away, and she can be found by looking for producer in the chat. I want to start today's session by talking a little bit about executive assistants, or at least how AI might affect the EA role. I think it's going to set the stage for much of what we talk about during the rest of this session. And before I start, I just want to address the elephant in the room. I'm not a wizard. This is what AI thinks I would look like as a wizard. And I put it up there just because it's amazing that I could not have done this a month ago. So the pace at which AI is changing is incredible. But let's get started talking about EAs. If we want to look at the EA role from a very simplistic, traditional viewpoint, and I don't want to disparage or take away from their role, but much of the daily tasks they focus on are managing schedules, handling communications, planning meetings, or doing other administrative tasks. These tasks take a lot of time. They require a certain amount of institutional knowledge. However, with the advent of AI, that is changing. There are tools being launched every day. You think about Copilot from Microsoft or Bard from Google. There are thousands of tools right now that are out there, and these tools can manage calendars. They can schedule meetings. They can provide reminders. They can even filter, prioritize, and respond to emails. They can prepare documents, they can prepare reports, they can analyze data. So they're essentially automating much of the daily tasks that a traditional EA would perform. And that exact technological revolution is happening right across the organization. And it's going even further than that, because these tools are also democratizing much of what was once considered unique skills domains of specialists. Tasks that needed a specialty knowledge or an institutional knowledge or experience may actually be easier to pick up or perform now. So it's acting like a form of informal cross-skilling. So what does that mean for our traditional EA role? Well, I believe it means either dissolution or evolution of the role itself. So it's either going to get to the point where there's no longer a need for an executive assistant. I don't think that's going to happen. Or more likely, the role of the EA is going to need to evolve into a more fluid, skills-based role. Maybe that's going to have a bit more strategic or a broader set of responsibilities. And that's going to happen in all of our positions across the organization. And with that, there's going to be a bunch of challenges, both in the short term and the long term. We're going to talk about those challenges. But first, I just want to summarize this to say that as AI tools improve, businesses are going to need to prioritize skill sets over traditional job descriptions. And that's going to lead to a tremendous transformation in the workplace. And this is very interesting because it becomes a bit odd. And I experienced this a couple of years ago when we put out a job listing that was based on skill sets. And while I was trying to fill in the job postings, it always asked for a title, but there was no title. We called that title Our Person because frankly, that person needed to do multiple roles. And what we were trying to hire was someone who had an ability to learn, someone who could do problem solving, someone who's good at working independently. And so we posted that, and it was amazing that a lot of our counterparts, my other business owners and HR people, really thought it was an odd posting. but was really honored was the breadth of applicants we got, because it really opened up the space and moved away from previous experience. So I think that's going to be happening to us as we move forward. So today, I just want to let you know what we're going to be talking about, and just a little more of my background. I have been active in AI since the launch of ChatGPT, very, very active. I read, eat, and sleep AI every day. I've always understood and looked at how this is going to affect my business, and I've been quick to jump in. And so while I think personally, with my knowledge, that we're far away from AI taking over the world and ruling us, I am pretty certain that it's going to quickly influence our organizational makeup, and it's going to blur a lot of boundaries around job functions. So it's important that we start to look at how AI is already changing our workforces and our workflows, and begin to envision that new workplace. We need to understand how this is going to affect our profitability or our ability as an organization to achieve our mission. So that's what we're going to talk about over the next 25 minutes, from a very light top-down look, because we could spend all day talking about this. And my real hope is that it inspires some interesting thinking, and it helps propel anyone who's an HR leader or a learning and development leader to try to get to the table, to start leading these conversations and to start doing it now. One thing we won't be doing is discussing any AI tools for HR. So having said that, I want to get a little bit of interactivity now and take a little breath. We're going to launch a poll. Audrey's going to launch it. And what I want to know is, how would you describe your workforce's current comfort level with AI? You know, at the top is, hey, we're implementing it everywhere. We're practically cyborgs. And at the very bottom is, we haven't started looking at it. So is that a new coffee brand? And then everywhere in between. So why don't we take a look at so far what we have. I'm going to wait a few minutes to see. Oh, good. 14 of you have answered. 11 of you answered. Sorry, I need to learn how to read a poll. Okay, Audrey, that's good. Let's share those results. So, okay, no one's brand new. That's great. And no one's practically a cyborg. That's really great, because you might not get as much out of this webinar if you were there. But everyone's eager to learn or dabbled, and that's a great place to be right now. So let's move forward and start talking about why you need to start looking at this now. If you're in HR or an L&D, why do you need to be talking about this? And the reality is simple. It's because the economic benefits are incredible, and companies will need to stay competitive and profitable to survive. So we're going to have to implement AI. And right now, your C-suite is talking about this. It's what they're reading about. So are your shareholders, and so are your board members. And they are reading about how AI will affect productivity in the economy, and what that means for companies in developed economies competing with developing ones. And you can bet, if they're reading it now, it's going to eventually trickle down to you and become your issue to deal with. So let's take a peek at one of the things they are reading. It's a study done by the McKinsey Global Institute. It's an AI study from last June. And in that study, they examined 850 job roles. And from those job roles, identified 2,100 detailed work activities that generative AI will be able to perform. Then they took that and identified 63 use cases across 16 business functions, and determined that the productivity increases will deliver up to 4.4 trillion in economic benefits. And those are some high numbers. And I'm going to be frank, they're a little too high for me to really comprehend. I can't wrap my head around the trillions. So it's big, it's important. And there's no wonder that AI conversations dominated all of the forums at the World Economic Forum in Davos this year. These numbers are hard to ignore. But I'll tell you one number that came out of that study that wasn't hard to understand for me. It was this one. They predict that we can see a 60 to 70% increase in productivity over the next 6 to 8 years. And remember, this is based on ChatGPT as it existed in June 2023, only 3 months after the launch of GPT-4. And this study was actually a refresh of a previous study that had shown a lower improvement of productivity over the same time period. So you can imagine how this is going to change again next year when the next release of ChatGPT comes out, because these releases are exponentially getting better. They're not small changes. So here's the thing. In developed economies with higher salaries like ours, this productivity increase is going to happen even faster. And we are going to have to adopt AI if we want to compete globally. So all that's good and fine. How likely is this to be happening in the next year or two, really? Well, the fact is it already is. And if we take a quick look at this example, it's a very typical marketing task, writing and publishing a blog post. And today, without AI, this task takes anywhere from 10 to 19 hours to perform. However, if you just use the existing generative AI chatbots, Cloud or ChatGPT, Copilot, this task can easily be reduced to 3 to 5 hours. And honestly, there are some automation tools and some other AI tools that could probably reduce this even further. So from 19 hours to 5 hours, or in the worst case, from 10 hours to 3 hours, it's still a significant performance improvement. And that's going to have a profound effect on our workforce as it happens right across the organization. And the impact is quicker and deeper than we think. As a matter of fact, it's happening right now. This is a great example, announcement that just came last week. Swedish fintech firm Klarna recently launched an AI chatbot to handle customer service requests. In just 1 month, the chatbot handled 2.3 million customer service chats in 35 languages. This app manages refunds and returns, and it handled 2/3 of its customer service chats during the month. Not only is the chatbot more accurate in error resolution, but it actually had a 25% drop in repeat inquiries. And they say that the bots are not only equivalent to human agents in terms of customer satisfaction, but they have that benefit of being available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And what I really liked about this article when I read it and why I wanted to include it is it wasn't so much the CEO bragging about the success of their AI bot. What he was talking about, as you read the article, was that we really need to start considering the impact and implications for the individuals that are going to be affected. And right now, during the World Government Summit, it just happened a couple of weeks ago, Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, made the statement that everyone in the world is now a programmer. And so if you think about your web development team and software development, where software is going as a whole, NVIDIA's goal is to keep creating better and better chips to enable AI. And one of the top uses of AI right now is to write code. And so they believe that in a few years, there will be no need for programmers, that it will be an interface. And if you're looking for a programmer tool to help you, it will be as simple as explaining to your AI chatbot what you need, and it will go out and create it. So when you start thinking about full stack developers, front end, back end developers, all of these specialty coding functions, where you have to start wondering, well, are we going to need this department? Or how do we cross skill them? How do we move them? The great news for IT is there is a more simple progression, because they could start learning machine language and prompt engineering. There are some skills that will still be needed that they can move into. But what they're going to be missing in a lot of cases are those soft skills, because developing an AI tool is going to require testing. It's going to require understanding the business requirements. It's going to require discussion and collaboration. And sometimes those skills are harder to find. And so how is this going to affect everyone? Because this is happening everywhere. And listen, I'm not a person to ring hypothetical warning bells. This stuff is happening now. And if you just do Google searches for news, you will read about it happening everywhere. And it's going to lead to a situation where on the surface, in the short term, it might be fair to say that we're going to get to a point where if we keep our current workforce exactly as it is, we're going to end up with a bunch of full-time employees doing part-time work. And really, that's not maintainable from a profitability point of view. So the reality is that we're going to have to change and redefine our job responsibilities and even the way we do business. And we're going to look at moving people away from these transactional administrative tasks to more creative and strategic ones. And with this skill set realignment and these new definitions are going to come a whole host of upskilling or cross-skilling challenges. As a matter of fact, if you get our newsletter, when we reviewed in January, we reviewed 25 predicted trends lists for learning and development in 2023. 24, and we compiled them into a list of 5. When we looked at those 25 lists, upskilling or cross-skilling in AI was on every single list. So this is a challenge that we're going to be facing. But frankly, what's exciting and what's scary at the same time is we don't even know what it's going to look like. If you think about how we plan upskilling now, it's very focused on this task, you do this, you do this. But now we're going to be looking at, okay, we need you to be a good creative problem solver. Oh, we need you to be able to think strategically. We need to be able to learn on your own. So the whole approach to upskilling and how we plan learning is going to change. And the thing is, what we don't truly understand yet is how much the AI tools themselves will help with that upskilling. So this is an exciting time, albeit a little bit nerve-wracking one, when we start thinking about how we're going to transform and upskill. And beyond that, there are some other issues that we have to consider. And to take a little break from my voice, what I'd like to do is ask you, based on everything that's been discussed, what are some other issues you think we need to consider when planning for this AI-driven workforce realignment? Now, just write your answers in the chat. Don't put up your hand. If this was a meeting, that would work, but in a webinar, it won't. Put your answers in the chat. I want to see what you think some of these issues might be. And if you can't come up with any, I'm going to come up with some after. So let's just see.
And we have a question in the Q&A tab. How do I get to this cyborg level of AI?
Yeah, you know what, Jeremy, thanks for that question. We're going to do some questions later, and actually, I'd like to tackle that one because there's a great article that I'm going to share today that just launched, that just came out from McKinsey, and it discusses this. It's pretty cool. But I'm not seeing any chats. We've got a quiet audience here. Either I'm not seeing them or they're not coming through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on and I'm going to bring some of those topics forward. So some of the other considerations we're going to have to deal with is, one, organizational structures are going to be effective. There's going to be a lot more cross-functional teams with a reduced emphasis on these traditional hierarchical reporting structures. As a matter of fact, the entire organization is going to have to modify the way they do business, because what we're going to find right away is that there's some quick hits. There's some really quick hits to getting productivity increases, but to turn that into profitability, we have to adjust how we're doing business. We either have to be getting more business or doing more with less, reducing our costs. So it's going to be a quick hit, but we're going to really have to look at that, how we rejig the business. And that's going to mean departments are going to evolve or merge. They may be focused on project-based outcomes and agility, or roles within the organization could become more fluid. Employees could be moving between tasks. There's just a ton of things that are going to happen just in that section. Then I'm just looking through I see some chats coming through. Change management issues, removal of bias. Yes, absolutely. So these are awesome considerations. So we're going to have this problem with impact on equality and employment and wages, job displacement, the digital divide. There's some ethical and social considerations, issues such as whose responsibility is it to retrain or redeploy affected workers? And what's the broader impact on social cohesion, on mental health? We just went through COVID. We had a mental health crisis come from that. We're now doing the work from home, work from office, push-pull, which has got its own set of issues. But I'll tell you, all of the things we talked about have one common thread, and that thread is people. AI implementation affects people, and people are the domain of HR and learning and development. So what I'd like to take away as a second big point for this is that we need to realize, and our C-suite needs to buy into the fact that this is a people issue, not an IT initiative. It's not the time for IT to be dictating how the company is going to handle AI like they did with their communications suite during COVID. HR needs to be the driver of this, as the biggest effect on the organization is people, and the workforce is the domain of HR. So I think this is the biggest challenge we have in HR and L&D, is getting to the table and not being seen as transactional. And I think this time we need to. I want to touch on upskilling a little bit because I think it warrants a lot more discussion. the internet, we remember when the internet, some of us are old enough to remember when the internet came out. When the internet came out, it was big, but the transformation of AI is bigger. And the internet created a whole entire new set of skills requirements. There was a massive upskilling requirement, but it started really slow. And it took its time, and the curve was really, really manageable. The challenge is that in this case, the transformation of AI in the workforce is going to be quicker, and the upskilling needs are going to be quicker. And that means we need to be talking about it now, and we need to be taking action. And we're actually seeing that when we're looking at how workers are thinking about AI. And I had seen some fear of job loss in the chat. When we look at a recent Accenture research paper on AI's effect on workforces, this research is showing that when it comes to AI, there's a bit of a trust gap between workers and leaders. So while most workers see value in working with Gen AI, more than half of them are still worried about job loss, stress, and behavior, and burnout, sorry. And almost 60% fear that their jobs are going to completely disappear. But at the same time, when you survey the C-suite leaders in those companies, they're saying that only 30% of their workers fear job displacement. It's a big divide. It's a big gap. And the gap goes farther than just perception. The gap actually exists in desire for upskilling to learn these skills. Because when these same people were surveyed, the vast majority of workers want the opportunity to learn AI skills. But the organizations haven't made it a priority. And only 5% of them are providing training. Now, this can be due to a large number of factors. I mean, obviously, there's security risks. Someone mentioned ethical and bias concerns. There's compliance issues. There's IP issues. I'm not going to read all of these. They're very common issues that we have to deal with. The problem is we can't wait for all of this to happen before we start. So we have to find that happy medium. As a matter of fact, Catherine Fortin-Lefebvre from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce had this quote in an article. I'm going to paraphrase it, but you can read it if you prefer. But she's seeing that too many Canadian companies are holding off implementing AI in the workplace because they're bogged down in dotting all their I's and crossing all their T's. And that's making adoption and implementation of AI too complex. And that's really a problem, because as we can see, when we look out and look out at the internet and what's being talked about, the time to start is now. Almost every major HR or business publication of note is heralding that message loud and clear. We need to start now. We need to start now. You've got to get started. So how do you marry this desire for getting all your I's dotted and T's crossed with actually getting started? And there's an easy solution. And this is a point in the webinar where I have to act a little like a YouTuber and say, hey, this video, but it's actually a webinar, was sponsored by Learngisitics, and in particular, their Mastering Generative AI training programs. So if you guys will bear with me for 30 seconds, I'm going to tell you a bit about this program, and then I'm going to move on. So Learngisitics has developed the perfect introductory program that's designed to bring workers and managers through an experiential journey to get comfortable and proficient using generative AI like ChatGPT. It's not an IT-based AI course. It's not a prompt engineering course, although we do discuss it. And there's no reference to Python coding. Instead, it's really a course for people. And it's to help people take away the fear and trepidation and start opening their eyes to the potential. It's designed to position ChatGPT as a partner, not as a threat. And it's that perfect starting point for organizations of all sizes who want to start the upskilling work now, but can't get deep into the mission critical stuff. So after this webinar, someone from Learngisitics is going to send you an email or connect with you via LinkedIn to share more information. It might be myself, it might be Audrey, it might be Jennifer. And at that point, if there's any interest in finding out more, you can let us know and we'll get a discovery call set up with you. In the meantime, that's it. Commercial over. Don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, we're almost done. I think we're about 20 minutes, 21 minutes in. I've been talking really fast. Let's start to wrap up because we can have more time for questions after. I want to start with saying that I hope some of these thoughts and information that I've presented gives you some food for thought. And I hope that if you're not already at the table and talking about this with your C-suite that you can use this information to get you there. And so we're going to review just 5 big points. The first is that AI use is going to drive a fundamental workplace shift with the workforce transitioning to skill-based roles. And this is going to affect the makeup of the entire organizational structure. And that's a people problem. AI implementation is a people issue. And that makes it an HR and L&D responsible, not an IT initiative. And by the way, I'm not trying to disparage IT people, but right now, there was a poll of CIOs and 94% have said they're already starting to implement AI in their LOB software or their LOB processes. So we need to be at a table, taking a lead role in the conversation, bringing up all of these other issues that are going to go along with that. Takeaway number 3, the need for upskilling is going to come rapidly, and we need to start thinking about how to upskilling workers now so that we're ready when that change comes. The 4th key takeaway, there is going to be a lot of corporate pushback. I'm going to call it pushback, but it might not be pushback. It might be bogging down. It might be just trying to slow things up as leaders try to get ahead of all those operational issues that we talked about. The challenge is if we wait until that happens, we're going to be behind the 8 ball. Don't forget, we are in a developed country where we worry about ethical bias, where we worry about IP, but we're competing with evolving economies where those fears and those concerns may not be so important. So they're going to be implementing this to get more productivity quicker. So we can't wait. We need to start now, and we need to do it in a supported, controlled environment. And the 5th key takeaway is simply this: it's a great time to start. I mean, we've seen workers are fearful, but they're intrigued. They're interested in learning AI. So starting now is going to kill a few birds with one stone, right? First, it's going to help alleviate some of the stress workers are feeling, fear of missing out, fear of job losses. Once they start to understand it, some of that fear will go away. Second, because they are actually still interested, and they're going to be much more engaged with the learning process. So it's a great time to start showing them. I think the third point, third bird that you'll kill with this stone, it's a horrible, horrible analogy. But anyway, it's going to help you understand better how AI is going to affect the productivity of your teams, at least at the service level. So you can start to plan for some of those upskilling needs, because let's face it, most of us don't really understand how this is going to work. It's not until we start using AI that we start realizing, oh, I can use it for this. Oh, I can use it for that. So if our team starts using it, at least at a surface level, we will be able to look at that. We'll be able to observe that, and we'll be able to take away, okay, these are the areas that I think we're going to gain productivity. And that will help us figure out where our upskilling need lies. So, oh, you know what, this team's going to have a lot of time. So what can we focus on upskilling them to have them prepared to move? And then I think finally, it's just going to help propel your organization ahead of the curve. We've seen only 5% of organizations, according to Accenture, are offering this training right now. So why not get ahead of it? Why not get ahead of the game? That is it for this. We could talk for, I literally can talk about this all day for hours. The handout that Audrey's going to put in the chat, Audrey, I don't know if you've put it in the chat yet.
Yep.
Has all of the links to the articles we've been looking at. And I want to, Jeremy, it's interesting you asked, how do I get to this cyborg level of AI? Well, using it is important, but as an organization, the very last article in that handout really talks about how the businesses are going to have to completely re-engineer how they do business in order to take advantage, because that article makes a really great point. I think I mentioned it earlier, that even though we can get some quick hits and, oh, great, I can do now a blog post in 3 hours instead of 10 hours. How do we turn that into profitability? How do we turn that into a competitive advantage? And I am not sure we're there yet. So that's how we have to do it, is we have to start looking at how we can completely redefine how we do business.